What is going on, people? Today's topic is car boot sales. I'm going to be talking about, tips and tricks that I use to make the most out of boot fairs, as they can be very effective and a great way to either make consistent income, because they're generally on every week, or if you were just looking to offload a load of your unwanted items and then make a bunch of money there and then. So yeah, starting off, if you were looking to buy and sell through boot fairs, because you can find some great deals. Many people do it, going to boot fairs with the intention of just, buying stock and then selling it online, sites like Facebook, eBay, whatever works for people really. So my first tip is always try and get there just before they say opening time to buyers. The main reason for that is, with my experience, a lot of boot fairs, say opening at 8:30, and turns out people are already looking around buying at 8:15 or even 8 o'clock. So it's always worth getting there a bit earlier to make sure you are one of the first ones that are going in. Obviously there's going to be a few people there as well, but you don't want turning up a bit later and it turns out someone else gets a great deal that you would have liked to have, and the reason you didn't get it is because you weren't there early enough. So just make sure you get there a bit before the, I guess, agreed time that they say. So yeah, that's really useful, because generally you find the best deals at the very start when no one's really looked properly through it. So I always, when I first get there, have a quick scan round, see if there's anything that really catches my eye, and then I'll do a more detailed route back round second time round, so I can have a proper rummage through stuff and see what's really there. The next point is understand the seller's mentality. Generally you can kind of gauge different sellers, because even though everyone's there to make as much money as possible, some people just don't want to be going home with it. So sometimes you can see stalls and you'll hear them say everything's for £1 or less. So always keep an eye out for them kind of stalls, because they're where you can make a lot of money, because people just don't want to be going home with it. So they'll literally take any offer, obviously within reason, that you offer them. So it's always worth keeping an eye out for them. So always bring lots of loose change. I found it really useful, especially when haggling, because what I used to do is I used to just bring notes. And the problem with that is, if let's say I'm buying something for £5 and I haggle them down to £3, if I then give them a fiver, it just makes the whole transaction really awkward, I've found. And I don't really get awkward with people and that, when I'm out and about, at boot fairs haggling and stuff. But if you just haggled someone down from a fiver and then you give them a £5 note, there's just something a bit weird about it. And it just means that the transaction's a lot quicker, and it means you can just carry on looking to buy stuff, and you're wasting less time at a stall when you could be, finding other stuff. So yeah, always bring lots of loose change. I generally bring 10p's, 20p's, 50p's, pounds, and £2. Then I'll bring, I don't know, 50 quid in notes, just in case there's a big item or expensive item that I'm interested in, because then it kind of covers you, because you don't want to ever run out of money at a boot fair, because you never know how much you're going to purchase. So it's always best to bring more money, and then you can always just bring it home, then bring less money, and then risk not being able to buy something because you didn't have the money on you, because most boot fairs are in fields and stuff, so there's no ATM machines. You can't just pull money out the wall. And I've never experienced anyone taking card at a boot fair. I mean, it might happen, don't get me wrong, but it's never happened to me where someone's offered that I can pay by card. So yeah, always bring more money than expected and bring lots of loose change. That's a really good, really useful point. So this next point kind of moves on from the last one. So if you don't drive, try and get someone who does drive to take you to the boot fair, just because you don't know how big or how many items you're going to be buying that day. So you might end up buying lots of bigger items that you can't carry. Even if you're within walking distance from the boot fair normally, you can't just carry loads of stuff on your back. So always bring a car, even if you have to pay an entrance fee. It's just worth it, because you wouldn't want to not be able to buy something just because you don't want to carry it back. So always bring a car. So going on to the next point, it's about electrical goods at boot fairs. I generally tend to steer away from electrical stuff, just because unless you can test it there and then, you do get people that will sell faulty stuff and claim it's not, because obviously by the time you're home, they've already packed up and gone. So yeah, I tend to stay away from electrical stuff. Obviously, I'm not saying, you know, never buy anything electrical again, but obviously just take in mind, not everything will work. That's why I generally like buying stuff that's, you know, it's a bit more simple. You can see and test it out there and then. But yeah, just take that in mind when buying electrical stuff, and obviously don't spend so much money on an item in case it doesn't work. So if you're going to buy electrical stuff, try and keep it quite cheap. Similar to that, when you're buying an item, it's quite easy to, like, you know, see it, you get excited about it, you buy it, and then later when you get home, you turn out, by looking on further inspection, it's actually got damage. So always make sure when you're there, you know, take a bit of time when you're looking through the item, just check there isn't any damage, because obviously that decreases the value of the item, which means if you're buying it at a price where you thought it was, you know, in really good condition, but it turns out it's in bad condition, you won't make as much money as you expected to make, and you might even lose money depending on how much you spend, of course. So they're my main pointers I'd take in mind when buying at boot fairs. Obviously there's more, and there's loads of other people out there, you know, that give their tips, so feel free to, you know, search that. But they're kind of the main ones that I take in mind when, you know, if anyone asks me, I'm going to boot fair this weekend, you know, do you want to come with me? They're the kind of things that I'd, you know, mention to them maybe beforehand, just so they kind of, because you don't want to go in there and be really unprepared, and it just makes the whole process run a lot more smoothly. So we're going to move on to tips and tricks for selling items at boot. So my first tip when selling at a boot fair is always bring a float of at least £15. The amount of people I've had when selling at a boot fair, they buy something, you know, for £2-3, and they just chuck a 20 at you, and you have to give them all your change. So make sure you have enough change, you know, to kind of, in case that does happen. But I mean, if you don't want to give up all your change over a small purchase, you know, feel free to say, I can't accept that unless you have change. Because you don't want to have no change for the whole rest of the day because one guy bought a £2 item. So just take that in mind. And also, I've had it before when I didn't take a big float, only took £5 or £10. I've had to turn away people because I couldn't give them the correct change. So you don't want to miss out on a sale just because you didn't, you know, prepare well enough. So yeah, just always bring enough change. My next point is always avoid using wooden tables. Generally, they're not as strong as, you know, the plastic or metal ones. And over time, you know, when they get damp, they get damaged a lot more than if they were plastic or metal. And they just can't take as many items on the top. So I'd always recommend spend a bit more, get a metal or plastic table, because then you won't have to keep on replacing it, because I've been through so many wooden tables just because they break. If they get a bit damp, they're done for. So yeah, always recommend spending a bit more on the tables, and it means you don't have to worry about, you know, them potentially collapsing. So my second tip when buying items at boot fairs is always bring lots of carrier bags. It just makes it easier when you're going around, if you're buying lots of small items, just to carry them all together. And it means you can spend more time on looking, on finding a great deal. With this as well though, obviously sometimes you might find bigger items that you really want to buy, but you don't want to carry it around the whole boot fair. So you can always ask the sellers on the stall if you can just leave it with them, and then at the end, you know, you can just go back round and collect all your items. I do that sometimes if I have so many items that I've bought on that day. But most of the time I can just carry it around anyway. But especially with the bigger items that might be more heavy, you don't want to be carrying that around the whole way, especially if there's quite a few rows. So yeah, always feel free to ask the people on the stalls if you can just leave it with them. Generally they ask you to pay first, which is fair enough, because obviously if you don't go back, they wouldn't have sold it. But yeah, always ask people, you know, there's no harm in asking. As I said earlier about when you get there early and then I have a quick scan round and then look around again, always look more than once. Like, always do go around more than once, just because a lot of the time you'll see stuff that you didn't see before. Even though it sounds really obvious, like I'll do a loot round, won't see anything, and on the second loot round I'll buy like 10 things. So it's just the way it works. Just having another fresh look at what's on sale, really. And sometimes people get stuff out their boot a bit later on that they maybe forgot about. So it's always worth going around again and checking if there's, you know, anything. So my next tip is, often when you're looking round boot fairs, especially this mainly happens when it's early on. You sometimes get sellers that turn up a bit late, because the sellers are supposed to get there. Generally, I think it's like 30 minutes before the buyers get there, but sometimes the sellers are arriving, you know, midway through the day. So when that does happen, obviously they'll still be offloading, you know, all their items while people are still looking around all the other stalls. When the person's getting all the stuff out, if I don't want to just stand there and wait ages while they offload it all, you can always ask if there's something particularly you're looking for. So for myself, one of the things I look out for is Lego. So I might just, you know, ask the person on the stall, have you got any Lego, by the way? And if they haven't, obviously I don't need to stand there for 10 minutes while they offload it, or when it also looks a bit weird. But yeah, feel free to ask people if they're offloading. Some people might get a bit pissed off about it, but I don't see anything wrong with it. I mean, I'm happy people asking when I'm offloading, because obviously if I do have it, I might get a sale out of it. So yeah, always take in mind that. Many people just kind of stand around awkwardly and kind of like look in the boot, but you might as well just ask, because it saves your time and theirs, really. So when I go to boot fairs personally, it is to buy and then sell on. I don't really go to buy for specific stuff, because I just buy it from a shop. But obviously if there's, you know, cool stuff that I see and I might like the look of, and I think, oh, I could do with that, I'll just buy it anyway. But my main intention of going to boot fairs is to buy and then sell on. So one of the really useful things to remember is, obviously you're going to be going there with your phone. So if you see an item that you're not too sure on the price, on the worth of the item, that is, just Google it, like just eBay it. To have a look on eBay, see what they're going for, and then you can understand properly, you know, how much it's worth. So you don't have to just blindly put a load of money down and not really know what you could sell it for. So just have a look. You know, you can, if you see it, you can just walk slightly up the aisle, you know, type it in on your phone and then go back. So another thing that I think is really important is be prepared to rummage through people's stuff. As sometimes people will just put out boxes because they can't be bothered, or they haven't got time, maybe they're with a customer or something. Be prepared to rummage through boxes. You can find some proper good stuff at the bottom of boxes, where just because people haven't persevered and looked through the whole box, you can find some cool stuff. So it's always worth, you know, properly looking through stalls, as sometimes the best items might be at the bottom, hence why they haven't sold yet. Next point that I think's, you know, really useful, is be prepared to walk away from, you know, a purchase. If you're not too sure, like, as in, if you could walk away without it and you wouldn't be bothered because there's not loads of money in it at the current price they're asking for, be prepared to walk away. And a lot of times you'd be surprised by the sellers will just go, actually mate, just have it, because no one wants to go home with stuff. So that is the end of this video regarding car boot sales. Obviously, if you think I've missed anything, any really important things, drop them down in the comments, so other people that are watching this can see that as well. And I'd be interested to see what you guys have to say as well. So yeah, if you did like the video, make sure to drop a like down below, subscribe, and yeah, peace.